we would not, or it would be foolish of us to bring Brother Faubert in here and just have him quizmaster, not have him teach. So I would like to have him come and teach. The last couple of years, we have had him do some basics in Bible quizzing, some memorization, some advanced study techniques last year. So this year we're going to focus a little more on some of the technical pieces. And so I've asked him to go over some of the new rules in the senior Bible quizzing, as well as talk about coaching strategy in terms of timeouts, and some quizzer strategy in terms of contesting. So we're going to welcome him. But before we welcome him, we do want to wish him a happy birthday, because it is his 43rd birthday today. And while he is speaking, I'm going to light up the interwebs and see if we can get some tweets to him. All right. So Brother Faubert, come and please just share with us whatever you feel is appropriate.
Thank you, Brother Ben. Thank you, everybody, for making this weekend a priority, setting aside the time and the expense, making the effort to get here. It's fantastic to once again be in Newark, Delaware. Amen. Just great. The weather's complying a little more this year. You know, it can be a challenge to hold a tournament in February in the Northeast. So I'm glad it wasn't too much of a problem, though I did hear, I guess, some folks south of us are getting hit. Yeah, okay. Well, all right. They'll have to just tune in online, I guess, or something. So, well, we've got a lot to cover here, and I'll want to keep an eye on that. So, everybody's got a rule book or access to a rule book, and Brother Bennett just asked me to quickly go over some of the rules, so I'm not going to necessarily read it verbatim to you, but just draw your attention to a couple of the rules. Now, this is a senior quiz rules that we're talking about, senior Bible quizzing, so it does not apply to junior Bible quizzing. But two things that I would like to point out before we get into what Brother Bennett requested, some talk about strategy and timeouts, contests, stuff like that, is that we've got a sort of new emergency procedure in place in the Senior Bible Quiz Manual. In the past, we've simply handled that on an ad hoc, case-by-case basis, and we just needed something in the manual. So basically, an emergency constitutes, you tossing your cookies at the quiz table, or almost, and you having to beat a path out of the quiz room to find the restroom or something like that. Or if you're hemorrhaging or something, some sort of emergency that you have to leave and quickly, right, where it may not make sense to wait till a good point. Yes, exactly. To a good strategic point in the quiz to be able to call a timeout and stand, state, wait to be recognized, and then, can I go? I'm bleeding profusely from the, no. All right. So in those instances, we do have protocol now in place in the manual, okay? So I pray, our biggest concern was that it would somehow be abused. But I believe that we've got safeguards in place so that it will not be abused. So you can read that. One other thing I wanted to draw your attention to was something that has changed slightly over the years, and it's changed once again for 2016. On page 32 of your senior quiz manual, paragraph 33, and I will read this verbatim. If an interrupted question originally ruled correct, right? So the question's been interrupted. The quizmaster or judges feel that it is correct. It is contested by the opposing team, and the original decision is reversed. All right? If it had not been counted correct and contested, it would have been a reread, right? So the original decision then is reversed due to an oversight by the quizmaster and or judges on the initial ruling. The original answer will be counted incorrect. It used to be that the question was simply closed at that point. It was counted incorrect and closed. The last 2 or 3 years, it's been avoided and replaced. And for 2016, the original answer will be counted incorrect, and a replacement question of the same point value and as close to the original description as possible will be read only to the team who would have received the reread originally. All right, everybody still with me? All right. To the team, only to the team who would have received the reread originally, if not for the oversight. And here's the twist. Since the replacement question is a new and different question, the question or answer may be contested by either team. All right, while it is only reread to the team who should have received that reread, if not for the oversight, because it's a new question, it's open season when it comes to contests, that sort of thing, all right, on the validity of the question or the answer that's given. All right, yes? That's correct, yes. It's all the same reread protocol applies, all right? And if it's only to your team, why would you need to interrupt anyway, right? So, because you shouldn't be racing against each other, right, quizzers? All right. Any other questions about that? Yes. No, it would only be the reversal on the answer. If a question is invalid, then it's going to be voided and replaced, and this wouldn't apply in that case. All right. Yes? Then the same thing would apply. This rule would apply, because that would have been an oversight on the part of the officials if your full 30 seconds was not given. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, no, it wouldn't be. If the quizzer was not given their full time to complete the answer, then this does not apply, right? In this case, again, it's sort of back to voiding and replacing the question. Yeah. Yes. 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 That's correct. That's right. So it's not the original question being voided and replaced that would start everything from scratch, but only the replacement question, and that question would then be reread only to the team to whom the original reread should have been read. Yep. Yes. Mm-hmm. That's correct. That's correct. That's right. Yes. All right. Okay, I see no more hands, so let's move on into a bit of our session here. And as Brother Ben had requested, we wanted to talk about the two perhaps most important strategic tools that quiz teams have. And this is applicable on both the junior and senior level. Those two most important strategic tools that you possess, one for the coach, timeout, and for quizzers, a contest. All right? So this is actually a bit of a preview or resource that Brother Ben and I are working on for the General Youth Division. And I'm sure it will take some massaging and edits and that sort of thing. But as I said, a bit of a preview. So let's dive into timeouts. Timeouts are the most important strategic tool that a coach has. All right, a coach cannot call a contest. Perhaps a point of order can be used to ask a question or clarify something, but it doesn't really affect the strategy of the game. But a good timeout at a crucial time can change the tenor of a quiz. All right, so we want to use those timeouts, especially since we've only got 2, as effectively as possible. All right. So, unless it's a 10-second or a substitution timeout, timeouts should generally not be called within the first 10 questions of a quiz. All right. Because you've only got 2, don't waste them early on. Whatever you have to tell your quizzers, coaches, tell them within the first half of the quizzes should be told to them before the quiz starts. All right? Get all your ducks in a row, everything that you need to tell them. In that first half of the quiz, tell them before the quiz starts. Now, there may be exceptions. All right? If a quizzer is going completely off the rails, all right, wildly interrupting, all right, question after question wrong, you may have to call a timeout. All right? I pray that's the exception, though, right? Not the norm at your quiz practice or every tournament you go to. All right, so, or if a quizzer is displaying a particularly poor attitude. All right? And to me, as a coach, that is cause for, pulling them from the quiz, calling a timeout and pulling them from the quiz if I've got a substitute. If I don't have a substitute, I can't pull them from the quiz. But unless their attitude changes, they probably won't be at the board the next quiz because they can watch from the audience. All right. So it's advisable, again, not to call your timeouts during those first 10 questions of a quiz. So, coach, you as the coach, you control the timeout. All right. If you call a timeout and the quizzers turn around and they're all how are you going to get a word in edgewise to be able to tell them there was a reason you called the timeout? You need to talk to them, to tell them, to direct them, and if they're rambling on, they're not going to hear what you have to say. All right. So when I coach my junior quizzers, there's one person that talks. That's the coach. All right. Unless you've been asked the question specifically. All right. So you're the one that controls the timeout, not the quizzers. Whether you are ahead or not, don't allow your quizzers to overly focus on the score. Now, every coach knows their particular team far better than I will ever know your particular team. It is my opinion coaching and my practice that I don't tell my quizzers the score. What the score is really doesn't matter to them. That's right. I either tell you to keep doing what you're doing because we're on the right track, or I need to make some sort of course correction to say, all right, you need to get in there or whatever. That really has no bearing on what the score is to them. All right? To them. And that frees them up because sometimes, and I've been at this quiz table, I mean, it was many years ago, but I know sometimes you get ahead and you can sort of take your foot off the gas a little. Say, okay, we're up by 60. All right, we're going to don't do it. All right? Or we're down by 60, 80, 100 points. And, oh, we're never going to catch up. The quiz is already lost. It's not. It's not. All right? So just, coach, you do the math and leave the quizzers to do what they do, and that's score points. All right? So whether you allow them to know the score or not, don't allow them to overly focus on the score. Because until a quiz is lost, they best concern themselves with scoring points and leaving the math to the coach, all right? Quizzes can be pressure cookers, right? That's part of the dynamics at the quiz board. We're quizzing under pressure, all right? And your quizzers rely on you, coaches, to have a steadying influence on them, all right? If you're all nervous and your voice is quivering and you can't they're going to just feed off of your nervousness, all right? You need to be steady and at the calm hand, steady hand at the helm, all right? The temptation during a timeout is to try to correct what has gone wrong to that point by rehashing it with your quizzers. That's sort of the temptation, isn't it? All right? They've had 3 or 4 rereads that they've given to the other team, and you're calling that timeout. It's like, okay, well, in this question, this is what you did wrong, and this is what, like, don't do it. Don't do it. You've only got 60 seconds. You have got to focus forward. Now, if you need to correct, you need to pull them back a little, whatever, but that is for the remainder of the quiz. Don't spend the time rehashing the questions you've already gone through. You can't change that, all right? So, don't allow your quizzers to look back in the quiz. I can't tell you how many times the timeout, the quizzers turn around, the first thing they say to, oh, I should have had this question on question 14. That was, it was this point. Don't worry about it. You can't change it. Let's focus forward, all right? Save the question by question evaluation for after the quiz. All right? You only have 60 seconds and you need to look forward. Rehashing what's gone wrong focuses on the negative, when you should always leave your team more positive than they were 60 seconds earlier. All right? You want them turning around, refreshed, ready to go, ready to tackle those last 6, 7 questions in a quiz. All right? So resist the temptation, focus forward. If you focus forward, your quizzers will focus forward. All right? So be specific and not vague. All right? As specific as possible when it comes to your instructions. All right? Not, well, you're doing all right, you need to get in there more or whatever. You need to be specific about, you need to be interrupting at this point. All right? You need the references coming. He's giving you a couple extra words. You can get in there perhaps a little earlier. Be as specific as you can be. All right? Make sure that you have your quizzers' eye contact and that they understand exactly what you're communicating. Because if the quiz is locked and you don't want them to interrupt or hit or answer, all right? And they're off like this while you're saying that, they're not going to hear that very important information, right? Make sure they have your eye contact and I forgot, right? Or, oh, I didn't understand. I didn't hear you say that. Those should never be excuses, all right? They never forget. They just wanted to hit that and get the points for themselves anyway, all right? So, yes. So, should never be excuses. So make sure you've got their icon and that they understand explicitly, all right? Again, there's junior teams here. When I coach a junior team, I say, for example, when the quiz is locked, we go into ice cream mode. I don't want their thumb or their finger anywhere near the top of that buzzer, all right? Right? It's ice cream mode. You're holding it at the bottom like you would an ice cream cone. All right? But I just tell them no licking the buzzer. All right? Despite that. All right? So, a couple more points here before we get into contest. Speak faith. Coaches, speak faith. When the pressure's on, uncertainty may arise in your quizzers' spirits. Regardless of how well they've prepared or how long your quizzers have quizzed, they may doubt the presence of the Lord with them and their ability to deliver in the clutch when the pressure's on. All right? Speak faith into their spirits. All right? Yeah, I know. This is what's going to happen through this quiz. You're going to turn around and with God's help, His grace, you're going to do your best. You're going to interrupt the next question. You may have an idea as a coach what type of question it's going to be, right? If there hasn't been that cross-reference question in the 30s, it's a good chance that number 20 might be that, all right? You can speak faith. You're going to get it, right? You're going to turn around and do your best. You've prepared, and even if they don't pull it out, their faith should remain high if you have spoken faith into them, all right? So, lastly, it's important to save, and again, sort of nuts and bolts here, it's important to save a timeout for important instructions at the end of the quiz. All right, if you've called your second timeout by question 14, that's a problem. Now you're relying on the other team to call their timeout to be able to communicate with your quizzers. Not a good strategy, okay? And I don't really have the liberty to share, go over everything here, but I think this pretty much covers what I wanted to share. Well, there is this one last point. You'll see occasionally a coach call a timeout even after question number 20 and before the quiz is closed. Brother Norman Pasley sort of set this practice. The reason that he does that, and the reason I have done that at times, in fact, I've had 2 timeouts still remaining after question 20 and called them both back to back. Because there was a life lesson that I needed to impart and drive home to my quizzers. And before they get down from the quiz board and are interacting with their friends, or people are coming and congratulating them or consoling them, depending on the situation, I have an opportunity, at least 60 seconds, that I can drive home this very important life lesson into their lives. All right? So if you've got them and you can use them, it's a great strategy, because we're not simply talking strategy about at a quiz board, but we're talking strategy in life as well. All right? This is not just a game. It's not just a program. It is a ministry. So, any questions quickly in regards to timeouts? Yes? Okay, yes. This is, again, let me hedge and say that you as a coach know your team better than I ever will, all right? But I have seen coaches call a timeout and say, 2 questions left, and they need one of the 2 questions. Doesn't matter whether they get them wrong or whatever, and just one, all right? They'll call a timeout after 18 and say, all right, we need one of the next 2. The other team gets question number 19. They're calling a timeout again to say, we need this last question. And I'm sort of thinking, have they forgotten 45 seconds earlier what you told them? I mean, if they're completely shaken or whatever, but sometimes as a coach, we can overcoach. We feel the need to stand up and talk because there's a nervousness involved, and we just need to talk and somehow try to fix the situation. You know what? Just let them do what they do. You don't need to sit there for 60 seconds when they've given very explicit instructions, all right? Because, yeah, you give the opportunity to the other team as well. Every timeout and 60 seconds you've got is 60 seconds the other team spends also, all right? So that's certainly something that you want to account for, yeah. Yes? Personally, it's never happened with me. It's never happened. I have seen captains that I could probably, in my over 30 years involved in quizzing, think of maybe 2 quizzers who felt that they had the liberty with their coach. That's exceptionally rare, and it usually happens because we didn't have sort of an emergency protocol in place. It was that sort of thing as well at times. So that's not to say, again, you know your team, you know your quizzers, but I believe that the coach should be the one calling and controlling the timeouts. Yeah. Did that answer your question as well previously? Okay. Any other questions about timeouts? Okay, let's quickly move into the other most strategic element, and this not for coaches, but for quizzers, all right, contests, all right. I loved to contest when I was a quizzer, just to deconstruct the question and get down there, and I had a lot of practice at it. I don't know that my odds were always that good, but we want to move very quickly. How much time do I have, Brother Ben? About 10. All right, that's more than I thought. So again, we'll probably not get through everything here, but let me speak to One, you should be practicing contests during your weekly quiz practice. Now that presumes you have a weekly quiz practice, all right? So you need to have a weekly quiz practice. And in that weekly quiz practice, if there's a faulty question or somebody gives an incorrect response, coaches, maybe, and I know, maybe they've given the wrong information and you count them correct despite that, just to see if the other quizzers are listening and paying attention and are going to contest, all right? Or you read a question you know is bad, and for the same reason, you read it anyway, and just trying to bait them into contesting to see if they're on the ball. And if they don't contest, then you stop and say, all right, what's wrong with this question? You guys should have been on your feet. All right? So take the time during a practice, your weekly practice, to go over to contest. Now, contests and discussions can go right down the rabbit hole, right? If they're long deliberations and you need to get into the exegesis of the passage and read multiple, just take it offline, make a note about it, all right? So don't bog down the practice doing it, but so just like practicing interrupting, you can practice contesting, all right? Structure your contests. Structure your contest. So what I advise is that a quizzer, if they're standing, they run this structure through their captain, then from their captain to their coach, and then from the coach at the judges. And that structure or format is, this is what the question or the answer, now you may be contesting about the question, you may be contesting about the answer, whether that answer was right or wrong. So whatever it is, you have to, it's good to prove to the judges that you know what the question or what the answer was. All right. So you've got that proof to say, I'm on the ball. I know the guys. I can't tell you how many times somebody's come down and say, well, okay, this is what the question was, and I'm being great. I'm trying to be gracious, and I'm thinking that's not what the question was. So immediately your stock with me is going down because you're not telling me, I read the question, I know what the question is on the sheet, that's not the question. So this is what the question or the answer was, depending on your point of contest. This is what the verse says. It's always good to prove that you know the scripture that you're referencing, all right? And here's the thing. I would say 80% of contests that I hear, this question was this is what the verse says. And then they look at us. And my eyes are wide. I'm like, yes, thank you. And then turn around and go back. And I'm, okay, we're missing an important part here. That is why it's right or wrong. All right? Yes, I know what the question says. I read the question. And I know what the verse says. I'm kind of familiar with the material. I don't know like you guys do. So I know those two elements. But what's your contest? All right? That is what, it is not my job to make a contest for you. So you have to explain why it is they should be counted right, or why they should be counted wrong, or why the question should be thrown out. All right? Everybody follow me? Okay. So, using a structured formula again and again in practice to your captain, to your coach, to the judges table, creates a comfort level now, because unless you're like me, who is down talking to the judges 3 times every quiz, it's kind of nerve-wracking to bring a contest down, and you're kind of shaky, and you're misquoting. I know you know those verses, but you're misquoting the verses and stuff. But if you stick to that structure that's repeated again and again and again, it creates a comfort level, within which you can then more adequately present your contest. So, use the full 60 seconds. Right? Rehearse your contest. If you've got something in the bag, you know absolutely it's the wrong reference or whatever. Coach, ask your quizzer, so I'm the judge, how are you going to present it? rehearse it to me. Use your full 60 seconds. Okay? It's yours to use. If you're unsure and they've not brought you something that's worth contesting, coaches, you can send them back and spend the remaining 30 seconds looking for something else in the passage that you can bring a contest on. All right? So use the full 60 seconds. If you're unsure about a contest or time is called, and it's not going to just withdraw. You've only 2 denied contests, and then you lose the right to contest. So you shouldn't be going down to the judges' table just winging it or real prepared. Unless it's the last question, and you can throw a Hail Mary if you want. But a contest in the 10-pointers is rarely worth the payoff. That's a risk that in 10 points is rarely worth it. All right, you want those contests when it matters most towards the end of the quiz. So unless it's a absolute rock solid, cannot possibly be anything but granted, what do they think they're doing reading that question? Contest. Don't do it. All right? Don't risk it being denied. In deciding whether to present a contest or not, take into account how long the quiz master judges may have already been deliberating. I will do my best to catch things in advance, make the corrections, we'll talk about it, cover it with the judge, and then come back before. And if we've spent, 5 less, hopefully, but 5 or 10 minutes already, you bring it, unless you've got something, that you've seen a vision at the quiz table, and you've got this fresh revelation from the Lord. The chances are pretty slim that we haven't covered it. All right, so take that into account. I'm not saying you can't contest and talk about it. All right, but again, you've only got so many denied. So, when contesting the other team's answer to a quotation question, present something specific for which the judges should listen. I'll have quizzes usually in a bind, usually on a quiz deciding question, come down and it's like, well, I just want you to listen to the tape and listen to the recording to make sure that they said it all right. I'm not going fishing for a contest. Unless you've got something specific, I don't need to listen to that recording. All right? So, have something specific. Always conclude your contest to the judges with thank you. All right? Thank you for the consideration. And let me make this my last point. We'll open it up for questions here. Whether a team's contest, your team's contest, is granted or denied, always demonstrate a right spirit before your quizzers. All right? In the body of Christ. You may well be convinced that the officials got it completely wrong. I know, because before I was official as a quizzer and a coach, there were times where they just flat out wrong. All right? And on the rare occasion, you may be right that they did, in fact, get it wrong. Nonetheless, it is an opportunity to develop grace, faith, and trust that despite men's shortcomings, despite my shortcomings as an official, because there are probably going to be times where I denied when I shouldn't have, or granted when I shouldn't have. God sees a much bigger picture and is in control of it all. And these are the sort of life lessons that, in the crucible of competition, that we have the opportunity to learn in Bible quizzing. All right? So, always maintain a right attitude and excellent spirit. Just granted or denied. All right? And don't take it into the next quiz. Sometimes I've seen quizzers, they bring a contest, it's denied, and they're confounded. They do not understand why. They're being challenged in their spirit, and 3 questions have gone by. And they haven't been listening because they're still stewing over that denied contest. All right? They got to leave it when he says, question number 18, you got to just let it go. All right? It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Okay. Any questions? All right, yes? No, you have 60 seconds from the time that you're identified as desiring to contest until the coach has to make the decision whether to send the quizzer to the judges table or bring that him or herself. All right? So once you're at the judges table, I don't want to say you can take as much time as you want, because don't do that. But the 60 seconds is no longer running. All right? Any other questions? Yes? Colin. If it's ambiguous, meaning that it can be interpreted more than one way. I'm trying to think of a quick example. Perhaps if it was something like they're pulling out a phrase and it says, to whom do these words refer? And within that phrase, there's actually two different pronouns that refer to two different, right? Maybe it's not the subject, but there is another pronoun that refers to somebody. Well, that's ambiguous then, right? Well, to whom are you referring, right, that this refers to? Right? So it's something that's ambiguous, yeah. Is there a question? Yep.
What is your opinion about how you can
Did everybody hear that question? Should the captain hear the full contest, taking the valuable 60 seconds before the quizzer goes back, all right, or just make sort of the pit stop, all right, to fulfill the rules and then go back and spend as much time as possible with the coach? That's the question. Really, it depends on your team. It depends on how much you trust your captain. It depends, coach, on how well you know the material. Okay? Again, it does give your quizzers an opportunity to sort of rehearse with the captain first before coming to the coach. My coach growing up didn't have as strong a grasp on the material as our captain did. So I always stopped and spoke with the captain, and on the rare occasion we would even withdraw it. Right? There was a time at Nationals I stood up and we were just sort of standing there, and our captain, Jason, he was like, well, I'm like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. He's like, oh, okay. So we stood there for another 15 seconds not saying anything. He's like, well, maybe we should withdraw it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess. All right. And then afterwards, after the quiz, I'm like, oh, that's what it was. It was what pair of opposites are contained in such and such a verse. But opposites in and of itself, it was like light and dark. That's opposites. Pair of opposites means two sets. And that's what it was. It just discriminated. So anyway, the point is that you may want to take that time, all right? So here's my rule of thumb. Coaches, if you're not, don't have as strong a grasp on the material as your captain, the captain can vet the contest for content, all right? While the coach then vets the contest for the sake of strategy, all right? And weighs the contest. Is it a very strong contest that we're going to bring down? Is it a sort of a dubious contest, and we don't want to risk it being denied? That's a strategic decision for the coach typically to make, and not necessarily the content of the verse itself. All right? Is that sort of the rule of thumb? All right. Yes? Colin again. Traditionally, no. Just because a question may be a poor question does not make it an invalid question. Yeah. But I feel you. I know. Yes? Yep. Well, that is included in our points of interpretation, and I would highly recommend, coaches, for you to familiarize yourself, and quizzers, be familiarized with the points of interpretation. We will be ruling on those, and despite the fact that it's capitalized in the KJV, barbarians will not be considered a nationality. All right. All right. Yes.
So, did I hear you correctly? Did I hear you correctly that if Wizard and/or the coach feels that there was something in the decision involved, but tagging it down to exactly what was off in the middle of the week, we are better off to come down there and actually articulate to you something we want you to check on.
Yes.
Full well knowing that it might be a little before or a little after, and in some ways we're sending you on a fishing expedition, but we've got to be specific to you, because otherwise, I heard you correctly, you have the prerogative to say, you actually listen to this and that, doesn't mean I'm going to.
Yes. In essence, yes. We will. If there's something where it's a little muddied through a certain passage, or they're sort of stumbling over their words, and you felt that, okay, right in here, I'm not sure that we heard every word discreetly, right? You don't have to say, well, they said this and I heard this, but if it's, okay, things got a little jumbled in here, can you listen to this specific portion of the verse? That's enough, right? And we will... That's right. It doesn't have to be, well, they said this and this is exactly what I heard. You know, sometimes in, quoting quickly, we can feel, and I'll try to play that back over in my head before ruling, or consult with the judges if there's any doubt in my mind. But as long as it's something specific, you can go to a place in the verse to say, this has got us a little leery. We'd like you to, listen to the recording specifically for this passage, this section. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Again, it really does depend on the team itself, because the coach, you may have a strong captain, a veteran quizzer, maybe in their last year of quizzing, they've proven themselves for many years. You may want their input before you hear that. If that's not the case, and the team's brand new, everybody's sort of at the more or less the same level, then perhaps you just want, look, you stand up, contest, the captain stands up, the obligatory pit stop, right, just so you don't get fouled, and then you come back and spend the 56 remaining seconds with me. Okay? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Usually if it's somebody other than captain standing contest, the captain may defer, but not all the time. All right. Maybe the captain knows that this person's standing up anyway, so I'm not going to bother standing up until, because they have to, I don't know. That was never our approach to it, but yes. And they may have something additional that they want to add, so the captain can make that call, and we sort of leave that to the quizzers. Yeah. Any other questions real quick? I see Brother Ben here. I'm out overtime. Okay. Melissa, and then Brother Kurt. No, only two people can ever confer at the same time. All right. So in that case, the captain doesn't contest. The other quizzers 2 and 3 do. Then 3 sits down and 2 automatically. Now, if all 3 contest, then the captain can choose which of the 2 quizzers. Right? If the captain stands with the quizzers, he can choose. Okay, I want to talk with 2, or I want to talk with 3, or say I won't talk with either of them. I'm just going to go back to talk to the coach. All right. Okay. So just a moment. We'll come right back. Yep. With Kurt. Yes. Yes. we have ameliorated the rules to cover just that instance, and because the quiz master saying correct or incorrect at that point is sort of, how do I say this? The term that keeps coming to mind is like the fruit of the poisonous tree. There was a mistake made on the part of the quizzer, and so everything after that is the product of that initial mistake. It doesn't really matter. The question, we still follow procedure. The question is read back to the initially responding quizzer, to the either all the way or to the point of interruption. That's right. Yes. Yep. All right. So. And we had one more hand over here. Then either coach or the captain says withdraw. If you're unsure and you're not finished, you should withdraw. All right? If you're just rehearsing what you've already decided, then that 60 seconds is expired, and if you feel confident, you bring it down to the judges' table. Either, again, the coach or the captain. For the most part, I would try, when I was coaching senior quizzers, I would feel much more confident about sending my senior quizzer, who's got a lot more experience, because it helps them develop articulation and presentation to the judges. All right. If it was something that I may have come up with as the coach, I felt more confident that I would bring it down. And in junior quizzing, it's far more likely that as the coach, I will bring the contest down as opposed to sending my quizzer. All right. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Brother Faubert. And we need to. We need to finish up right there, and if you have any questions, please, these are good for us. As Brother Faubert mentioned, we are working on a kind of a manuscript that we're going through that's going to be released later. So if you have more questions, please feel free to email them to us. You have my email address, obviously, if you registered here, and Brother Faubert's email address is on the website, on the seniorbiblequizzing.com website. So please feel free, send us your questions, and that'll help us think and churn through some of these concepts. But thank you again to Brother Faubert for that very enlightening session. It's always good to have him here. That is the one of the great things about having this tournament. All right, so now we're going to